哎，进口的好不好？好，好在哪
Are
里？因
imported
为
goods
它
any
真的
good?
好，
Yes, they are.
西门子的最
Why?
低。
Because they're genuinely good. Are domestic needles any good? They cost only 0.30 yuan, but they're painful to use, thick, and sometimes even have burrs. Imported needles cost 2 yuan. They don't hurt when used and even come with rebates.
The most outspoken doctor online has exposed the grim reality of China's medical equipment industry. An imported CT machine costs 5 million yuan at the factory, but by the time it reaches the hospital, it's priced at 8 million yuan. Suppliers pocket the difference, and hospital leaders take kickbacks. From expensive MRIs to cheap needles and syringes, there's exploitation at every level, and prices keep rising. Since mid-2023, a sudden anti-corruption storm shook the industry, completely dismantling this profit chain. Hospital procurement departments were terrified, fearing they might be next. Distributors suffered even more, with some packing up and fleeing in the middle of the night. Warehouses of medical equipment companies were left with stock worth billions. Experts from provincial finance departments privately joked, saying, "In the past, the phone never stopped ringing. Now there are hardly any invitations to bid all year." Looking at the data from the first half of this year, you can see how severe the cuts have been. The total amount for medical equipment bids nationwide was only 52 billion yuan, compared to the 80 billion yuan during the same period last year, a drop of 35%. The biggest losses were in large equipment, such as MRIs and CTs, which saw a 40% reduction from 32 billion yuan last year. Endoscopes and monitoring equipment were even worse, dropping from 11 billion yuan to half that amount. The worst part is that this still includes orders carried over from last year. If we look at new bids alone, the situation would be even worse. One distributor, looking at the mountain of unsold inventory in their warehouse, bitterly laughed and said,
说好下半年会有大红包。
Wasn't it agreed that in the first half of the year, we'd focus on cracking down on hospital directors and delay equipment procurement for a bit, then update equipment and get rewarded in the second half? So what happened? This year's first half hospital equipment procurement is barely 1/10 of last year's total. This isn't delaying for a bit, it's clearly slamming on the brakes.
The worst hit are those dealing with large equipment. In the first half of 2024, over half of medical device companies saw their performance dive. BMC Medical, which made ventilators, was booming during the pandemic, with hospitals rushing to buy, but now demand has returned to normal, leaving them with huge inventory. Their revenue for the first 9 months of the year dropped by 36%, and profits were slashed in half. MGI Tech's nucleic acid testers, which sold like hotcakes during the pandemic, are now stuck in their hands. Their gene sequencers, which could last for years, are not a priority for hospitals to update. Worse still, the international market is dominated by giants like Illumina and Thermo Fisher, with decades of technological development and tight patents, leaving MGI in a tight spot. Their revenue fell by 15% in the first 3 quarters, resulting in a loss of 463 million yuan. The hardest hit is Lepu Medical, which manufactures heart stents and pacemakers. They used to sell a stent for 13,000 yuan, but now it's been slashed to 700 yuan due to bulk procurement policies, basically just a fraction of the original price. Considering the research, personnel, and equipment costs, the price cut is devastating. Sinocare has an interesting story. It survived on low-end consumables like glucose meters and test strips. After winning a bulk procurement bid, its revenue surprisingly rose by 4.8%. However, sales expenses also jumped by 17.5%. Why spend more on marketing if they won the bid? Could the extra money be going somewhere else? The bulk procurement policy is a real storm. In April 2023, 6 regions cut prices for low-value consumables by 90%, and the procurement volume skyrocketed to over 200 million items. High-value consumables followed, with products like nerve intervention devices, contact lenses, and implants all falling under the policy. Regulators are watching closely, and any misstep could result in penalties. After this wave, many small and medium distributors were wiped out, and even large companies are struggling. Compared to this, AutoBio actively participated in bulk procurement, cutting prices by 50% to win big external diagnostic contracts. Although their profits dropped by 3%, it wasn't too bad considering the cold market. International brands like Roche and Abbott are gaining ground in China, pushing AutoBio out of the high-end market. And overseas, Southeast Asia and Africa are tightening their belts, so there's little money for their equipment. The diagnostic industry has low barriers to entry, and domestic competitors are slashing prices, making it harder for auto. The entire medical device industry is facing huge challenges: stricter regulations, difficulty getting new products approved, hospitals constrained by insurance policies, and continued price cuts from bulk procurement. The most pressing issue is that local finances are tight, leading to longer payment cycles, and companies struggle to collect payments. These problems won't be solved anytime soon. Collections are a nightmare. Outside of the top-tier cities like Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen, payment cycles in other areas can range from 6 months to a year, with some even taking up to 2 years. Despite promises of payments within a month for bulk procurement, most hospitals delay payments by 3 to 6 months. A business owner recently complained, "After deducting taxes and various costs, the profit is so small that I can't even cover the bank interest. If I end up dealing with a private hospital on the brink of closing, those accounts receivable on paper might just become a numbers game. Is it possible to hang in there?" In this tough situation, many manufacturers have started working with large state-owned logistics companies for distribution, essentially acting as new kinds of distributors. The manufacturers give up 5 to 15% of their profit margin in exchange for these state-owned enterprises paying cash on time. At least they'll have cash in hand. These state-owned enterprises, backed by national credit, have very low financing costs, less than 3% annually, and can handle the pressure of long payment cycles. The result? Private distributors who were once active in the market may soon be gone. The old, somewhat chaotic, but dynamic private distribution system, which has been able to drive innovation, is being replaced by a state-owned system that, though less efficient, is easier to control. This is economics with Chinese characteristics. When faced with problems, instead of solving the issue, just eliminate the ones raising the questions. The market's potential has stagnated. Speaking of this, we can't ignore the issue of R&D in medical devices. Some people sarcastically say, "Well, now with lower prices and no kickbacks, we'll definitely see real innovation, right?" But reality quickly proves them wrong. One medical device company founder is nearly in tears. He said, "We invested 200 million yuan over 6 years in R&D, but all our clinical trials failed. Now, with prices so low, who dares to invest more?" If you visit a medical device expo, you'll see that many domestic manufacturers just copy foreign technology. Innovation is dead. Companies are out of money for R&D. Who will push technological progress? How long can those with potential even survive? Take hearing aids as an example. The price might shock you at first. 7,000 yuan, but the manufacturer's cost is only a few hundred. The extra profit is supposed to go into optimizing the acoustic algorithms, improving noise processing, and developing new chips. But now, with the price cuts and bulk procurement, companies can't afford to invest in those technologies anymore. If they stop investing in tech advancements, who suffers? It's the patients who need the hearing aids. High-value consumables have been slashed even more drastically, from hundreds of yuan to just a few dozen. The price can't even cover basic manufacturing costs. Manufacturers don't know if they'll recover the money they invested before the products were pulled from the market. A product that used to sell for 10,000 yuan is now only worth 2,000 in bulk procurement. Companies are resorting to tricks like breaking a single product into several smaller parts and selling them separately to stretch their profits. But this is just a way to buy time. It won't change the industry's downward spiral. Looking at the current state of China's medical device market, it's really a pity. Take high-end medical equipment, for example. Over 90% of it is imported. Why? Because the quality gap is so obvious that even a small arthroscope shows the difference.
The field of view of imported arthroscopes can reach 110 degrees, while domestic ones typically only have 70 to 90 degrees. This directly affects a surgeon's view during operations. Imported ones are sealed with metal solder, making them resistant to high-temperature sterilization. Domestic ones, on the other hand, are glued together, and the glue often comes apart during sterilization, causing water to seep into the lenses and significantly shorten their lifespan. Imported arthroscopes use an imported optical system. While the basic clarity is similar, the images from imported arthroscopes are more vivid, brighter, and clearer, much like the difference in photo quality between an iPhone and early-generation standard phones.
The technology gap isn't without reason. Western countries have built up over 180 years of technological expertise, a complete industrial system, and a well-established market economy and innovative mechanisms. Companies earn money through real skills, continuously innovating and making breakthroughs to dominate the market. The UK's national health system uses transparent fixed-price procurement. So hospitals don't need to rely on corruption to operate. The US healthcare system, while expensive, allows manufacturers to earn legitimate profits, which they reinvest in ongoing R&D and after-sales service. In contrast, medical device companies under the Chinese Communist Party's control either survive by relying on power and rent-seeking or by fighting for scraps in the low-end market. The road to catching up was already tough, but the CCP's introduction of bulk procurement and price slashing has turned investment in the industry into something close to self-destruction. The numbers paint a grim picture. The East Money All-Index Medical Device ETF, which has been around for over a year, is down by 12%. Even industry leaders like Mindray and United Imaging are seeing their stock prices drop. What was once the hot industry is now something people are avoiding like a hot potato. In such an environment, can companies innovate? The system doesn't give businesses a chance to breathe. Put yourself in the shoes of a business owner. With prices slashed so low, would you want to keep investing? Of course not. So the reality is, companies can only scrape by in the low-end sector, hanging on day by day. Many companies are now turning to overseas markets, but foreign giants are well prepared, with patents thicker than castle walls. Getting Chinese products certified in the US or EU is nearly impossible, and even if they manage to enter, it takes a lot of money and time. With no money to be made domestically and being squeezed abroad, Chinese medical device companies are facing a double whammy, and the future looks bleak. This is the true state of China's medical device industry, a life of feast or famine. They can't play in the high-end market, the low-end market is overcrowded, and despite working hard, they can't even get a fair share. This is also the fundamental reason why the high-end medical equipment market is monopolized by foreign companies. Under the CCP's distorted system, there's no fertile ground for genuine innovation. The medical technological advances that the West is proud of are supported by market economies, legal protections, and innovation-friendly environments. In China, the CCP only knows how to cut prices and impose blanket crackdowns. The bulk procurement policy is considered a victory as long as the numbers look good and prices are low. It doesn't provide a healthy ecosystem for the industry or space for companies to breathe. It simply replaces a healthy market mechanism and independent regulation with price controls. Such drastic price cuts leave many companies in the industry facing irreversible damage. While the environment for research and innovation is destroyed, this is not a concern for the government. Looking at how hard it is for medical device companies, with low returns on R&D investments, high barriers to entry for new products, and profits squeezed to the limit, this is not just a normal market fluctuation, it's a failure of industry policy under the CCP system. Why is it like this? Simple. When has the CCP ever truly cared about improving life for the people? Hospitals, distributors, and officials have been exploiting the system together, and the CCP has allowed this corruption to go on for decades. The medical system's credibility was long shattered, and this round of anti-corruption in the medical field is just talk. In reality, the government is trying to recover money from corrupt hospital directors because the economy is struggling. Prices have been slashed due to bulk procurement, but the money saved hasn't gone to the people. It's been used to fill the holes in the healthcare insurance system. During the 3 years of the pandemic, when the whole country was getting vaccinated and doing nucleic acid tests, the funds were deducted from their healthcare insurance. Hospitals have lost trillions, but where has the money gone? It's clear, the majority has ended up in the pockets of certain leaders and their associated interests. The CCP system is a closed loop that relies on corruption to function. Without long-term institutional reforms to replace it, the system fails. If we zoom out, from the frenzied rush to buy medical equipment and nucleic acid testing tools during the pandemic, to the post-pandemic push for cheap procurement, the CCP has essentially turned public health into a playground for power struggles. Policies are constantly changing, businesses are exhausted from keeping up, and there's no transparent institutional framework, no independent industry regulation, only the CCP's political will guiding everything. Now, with kickbacks out, healthcare workers' salaries haven't increased, and equipment quality has worsened. It means that doctors have to follow policy guidelines even when prescribing basic medicine like aspirin. They can only use it for pain relief, not for fever reduction. It's clear that within the CCP system, power is the core. Medical staff are secondary, and equipment manufacturers are treated like expendable resources. Advanced medical devices still rely 90% on imports, while domestic R&D struggles due to a lack of environment, funding, and encouragement. Patents bar the entry overseas. The current winter of the medical device industry is not just a simple economic cycle, it is the inevitable result of the CCP's strong market intervention, trampling on market rules and sacrificing industrial innovation to solidify its own power. The destruction of the R&D environment, the collapse of entrepreneurial confidence, the outflow of talent, and the stagnation of innovation are all fatal blows. For the CCP, they only approach economic issues through a political lens, replacing scientific planning with political will, and using administrative orders to replace fair competition. There is no real market regulation, no transparent oversight system, only chaotic, politically driven actions and power struggles. The medical device industry, which has long survived on under-the-table deals and gray interests, will collapse the moment the political winds change. This outcome is both absurd and entirely predictable. Without fair, transparent, and stable institutional guarantees, no matter how much the CCP boasts about an industrial system or strong national will, any attempt to develop an industry ends up becoming a form of self-destruction.